Welcome to Scary Story Podcast. In this episode, we have a story about a beloved ragdoll, along with one about a peculiar case of a joke gone wrong. My name is Edwin, and here is a scary story. Caroline misses you too. It was 9 a.m. and bright outside. The light bothered me, especially after tossing and turning the whole night. I'm still the same way like when my sister and I were kids. You know, too excited the night before going to a theme park. But this was going to take a toll on me. I couldn't sleep and I had a long day of orientation at my new college. Plus, I would have to drag my luggage up a few floors of my dorm building. There's something about being excited over an event that gets rid of your tiredness, doesn't it? But that light from my window, my God, the thing was so bright that I had forgotten completely what a true morning light was like. Mom had convinced me to pack the dark curtains from my room. You know, the ones that block out the light. I'm glad I did. It would make my room feel like nighttime all the time, and Mom was always right. I started looking at the things and random collections I supposedly started when I was a kid. And then I looked at everything that was on my desk and on the shelves. I tried starting a playing card collection, a rock collection, a coin collection with that map with the quarters from every state in the United States. But I gave up pretty easily on those. Still, I had a tough time getting rid of things. So I stood there, like they do in the movies, reminiscing, I guess you could say, about my life up through high school. I smiled to myself. I was being dramatic. I looked at my mirror with a couple of pictures Mom printed out for me when something caught my eye from the reflection behind me. I turned around. Next to the wooden blocks and the old paper airplane that I had ever since I was a little kid was an empty space. Caroline was gone. I looked behind the bed, the space between the frame and the wall. Had I covered it with blankets without noticing when I quickly made the bed? I know it wasn't important, I know that. But there's an odd sense of guilt and irrational fear of losing something that important. She was given to me for my 4th birthday. Dad used to joke that she was bigger than me when I got her, and she easily could have been. Made out of cloth and wearing a red dress with the dark hair made of yarn. I used to stretch that doll as I carried it everywhere by the hand. I cried when they washed her for the first time. I also cried at night because of it. It's a long story, but my grandma took the doll away from me after speaking with my mom about suspecting that the doll had a dark heart. Mom sort of took it seriously and tried to hide Caroline from me, hoping that I would eventually forget about her. But Dad took care of that pretty quickly. One of the only arguments I remember as a kid from my parents was when I cried over Caroline. Dad argued that it was nonsense, the thing about the dark heart. Nobody, he bet, not even his own mother-in-law, even knew what that meant. What I know about the dark heart theory is that inanimate objects, things like furniture or toys, even cars, can have a dark core of energy, lurking either from a sinister past or tragedy, or can be that way due to a curse. Granted, I had to figure this out much later, as every once in a while Grandma would ask me about the doll and demand that we get rid of it. That's when I got curious about it. But to Grandma, I'd normally just chuckle and tell her that the doll was gone and to stop worrying about it. She would give me that look that I remember very well from her, and when she died, I strongly considered granting her the wish. But when it came down to picking what was going to the trash and what was going to the thrift store, I just couldn't do it. It was almost 10 in the morning and Dad was at the door of my room asking for my suitcase. He carried it downstairs and walked through the house. I heard the trunk of the car shut as I worked my way downstairs with the bag of things that Mom had packed for me that I would be taking along with my carry-on for my flight. I wasn't aware of it, but Caroline flew with me along with my other stuff across the state. Nobody, to this day, will admit to having placed her there. It was until I met my roommate, who also appreciated the dark curtains, by the way, who started telling me about the strange things that were happening in the middle of the night. Her bed, across from mine, was separated by a wooden closet where we each kept our things. She described sounds coming from the closet, things that would tap and rattle around. She thought it was rats, but the space was so small that you could see the floor of it, and there was no way an animal could be living there. A part of me told me that Caroline had something to do with it. I was too embarrassed to even bring it up. And it wasn't until she started describing soft cries, like those of a young girl, that I started doubting that it was her imagination. Those memories of taking the doll outside with me to play in the backyard, the way I would speak to her and ask her to say something to me. I remember wishing so badly that she was alive. I remember the way Mom made me take off my shoes with that stern voice because I had muddied them. And then she tore Caroline away from my hand to wash her. I remember the way Caroline cried. And I remember those cries too, back when my mom hid the doll from me. Dad thought it was only me, but I believed back then that Caroline was missing me too. But the taps were something new, see? The only time I heard them was when my cousins came over and when my aunt made them clean up the mess they made in my room. They simply stuffed Caroline into one of the plastic toy chests that I had and forgot about her. I must have been like, 8 or 9 years old? That's when I heard the taps coming from inside the toy chest. Scared one night, I covered myself up with a blanket and cried myself to sleep in silence. Yet you could still hear the soft squeals coming from the chest. Caroline had always been used to being on display. So that's what I did after I took Caroline back home and put her in her own spot. Mom grew tired of the cries and the taps soon after. She got rid of the doll and never told me about it. Dad tells me that she sent it to a thrift store, but Mom says that she threw it in the trash. Still, Dad did his best to get it back, but couldn't find it. Even though I understand Mom, I know that she knew how I felt about it, and she did her best to tell me that it was the right thing to do. That it wasn't worth all of the trouble the doll was causing around the house. I never asked about the trouble. I didn't want to know back then. I was angry. But now I simply remember the nice things about my childhood with that doll and the things we used to do. I miss Caroline. It helps to think that someone out there has her. I even dream about her sometimes. She speaks to me there. Sometimes I hear her cries. I'm sure whoever has her probably hears her too. The following story is called Meat for Sale, and it will continue right after this. The story is about a simple joke that people took too seriously. Meat for sale. Kids were out in the front yard again, treating it as their own little park or something, and it really made me angry. It would be years until those little brats would begin to get a glimpse of what taking care of the most beautiful lawn on my street was like. I tried to scare them off with a water hose one time, but one of those parents, you know the kind, had the audacity to come to my front door and complain about it. What, the water hurt the kid? It was water. But what else can we expect from a child with a parent like that woman? I told her to go away and close the door before she took out her cell phone to record me. My grandchildren always told me to watch out for people like that, people that record you, because it will go viral or something like that. But it's when people get angry at you for offending them. At least that's what I understood. They also warned me about the phone calls from people pretending to be someone I know, or those that ask for credit card numbers to verify a purchase, but I catch on right away. I don't trust credit cards. I tried everything to get rid of those kids, from simple keep out signs to signs with beware of dog wording. Yet those little humans kept rolling down the tiny hill of my front yard and onto the garden area. I got a good look at one of them once, and I stretched out my hand and pointed my finger and lifted my thumb in the shape of a gun. There were 4 that kept returning. Water Kid, Ponytail, Belly, and his younger sister, Booger Girl. Booger Girl and Belly both knew Ponytail, and I think they met Water Kid there. When I sprayed Water Kid, all 4 of them stopped showing up for a few days, but later came back. The woman who came to complain turned that little kid into a monster. I swear he would come by and beg to be seen as he stood in the middle of the yard. Him and his friends went through the yard after school, their shoes bending and twisting every blade of grass as they ran through it. I just stared at them from the safe, dark living room. But I had a plan. It was supposed to be a joke that would only scare a child, and I saw it in a movie. So I went to the hardware store and picked up a piece of wood and red spray paint. Let's not get into the details, paint was never supposed to cost this much, but that's something else. I had to saw off part of the wood into a neat square, and they offered to do it there. But this is stuff I could do on my own. Once it was perfect, I saw it through one of the sides again. A sign like this would be better if it looked a little crooked. Then I picked up my stencils, the same ones that I marked the house numbers with. I couldn't help but smile to myself and imagine those kids, their eyes, as I mouthed out the words. Children meat for sale. And it worked. Water Kid saw it first, can you believe that? He walked up to it and read it out loud and then took off running right across the street. Probably to go tell his mother. Then Ponytail and the other 2 came by with their backpacks on when Belly pointed at the sign. Booger Girl didn't know what the sign said and walked up to it. But the other 2 came back and pulled her away. I laughed so hard that the tears started rolling down my left eye as I went to the porch and pulled the sign down and placed it inside by the front door. The news had just started, so it was around 6 p.m. when I heard a light knock on the door, and then chatter from the outside. It was Water Kid's mom. I cracked it open and asked how I could help her. She said that she wanted to talk to me. I didn't want to talk, especially with her cell phone right in my face. Her voice got angrier as she spoke even more, and I tried to shut the door. She yelled, calling me God knows what, and then said that I was kidnapping children and turning them into meat. She walked along the front porch and to the other front window and then tried recording inside my house, all while speaking to somebody while recording, announcing to them that she was going to file a complaint and everything. Woman went all out. Water Kid was going to have some trouble once he grew up if he always depended on his mom to fix things for him. Then it happened. I started getting people knocking on my door. Reporters, they said. They wanted to talk about the incident with the kids and what I was doing, what I did for a living, and how I explained myself. These guys are intense with their questioning, and they don't take answers very well. They simply fire question after question, and I refuse to answer anything. I know my rights. Then I got a phone call from one of my daughters, Amy, who lived a couple of states over now. She told me she had heard about me on the news and if everything was all right. I explained to her the thing about the sign, the joke I made. She laughed, but she said to simply keep to myself for a little while and that people would forget. She was right. People did. The phone calls from reporters stopped. The neighbors stopped lurking around the front yard and taking photos. I could finally take out the trash without feeling those eyes from the houses across the street staring at me through the windows. The sign was funny, well, to me, and I still kept it in my garage. The kids stopped showing up in the front yard, so my mission was complete. But then one day, when I was sitting on the couch, flicking through the channels on the television, my phone rang. I walked to the kitchen and picked it up. Before I could say hello, I heard a voice on the other end say, "I'm calling about the sign." Not this again, I remember thinking to myself. Another reporter? This guy had a strange tone to his voice. Almost nervous. Wrong number, I started saying, about to put the phone back on the hook. Wait, I heard the man say, sounding desperate. I put the phone closer to my ear. How much is it? To get a notification when new episodes come out, enter your email over on scarystorypodcast.com. You can also click follow right now on your podcast player. Scary Story Podcast is written and produced by me, EDWIN. Until next time, thank you very much for listening.